surprisingly human.
I'm Jeremy Wade, biologist and extreme angler, in search of freshwater monsters. I normally track down these beasts in the tropics. I've never searched for one in the subarctic before. On these lakes deep in the Alaskan wilderness, people have been going missing without trace for as long as anyone can remember. There are native myths of a monster that's killing them.
People have just disappeared out of their boats.
Whatever it was in the water, they were afraid it would just come up and swallow them.
It has no fear of taking on boats and their propellers.
The motor prop, you can see teeth marks on it.
There have been many strange sightings as well.
He said he could see on the surface of the water a large octopus. He judged the length of the arms to be near 100 feet.
I'm going to investigate whether there really is a deadly monster from the deep, killing all these people.
It's quite possible this is the biggest fish that I've ever had on the end of my line.
One of my obsessions is tracking down freshwater monsters throughout the world's rivers. But a story of one monster in an Alaskan lake particularly caught my imagination. There are many myths of lake monsters all around the world, from places such as Loch Ness in Scotland and Lake Tianchi in China. No one's sure these creatures have actually been seen, but this monster in Lake Clark and Iliamna is different. Since the 1940s, bush pilots have been flying over this remote area, and sightings seem to be getting more and more frequent. There are reports of it being up to 20 feet long. What are these mysterious shapes in the water, and are they causing people to drown and disappear into the depths without leaving a trace? People have tried to prove its existence for many years. 30 years ago, there was even a $100,000 reward put on its head. That's $500,000 in today's money. This kind of bounty attracted many monster hunters, from serious fishermen to someone who tried to lure it out of the water by playing music. All these attempts failed, and eventually the reward was withdrawn. With still no hard proof, it would be easy to dismiss this monster as pure fantasy. But I believe these stories must have come from somewhere, and there is something down there in the depths. This is my first trip to Alaska, and my journey starts by going deep into its wilderness. I normally fish in the tropics, and I'm out of my element in a land of bottomless icy lakes, jagged mountains, and Arctic tundra. As a proportion of its population, more people go missing in this forbidding landscape than in any other state in the US. The best way into this isolated area is by plane, threading your way through narrow mountain passes where conditions can deteriorate in a moment. There are many legends of this monster, but between the smoke of the clouds and the mirrors of the lakes, could it actually exist? My investigation to find out will focus on two connected bodies of water, Lake Clark and Lake Iliamna, which together cover an area of over 1,000 square miles, roughly the size of Rhode Island. The larger of the two, Lake Iliamna, is 77 miles long and 22 miles wide, making it the largest freshwater lake in Alaska. Both lakes reach staggering depths of up to 1,000 feet. With such a vast area of water, I've probably got more chance of winning the lottery than catching this monster on my own. The best way to start my search is to gain some local knowledge.
Actually quite a few communities dotted around the lakes. These are the people who will have been here literally for generations, and these will be the people who have the stories about the monster. So they're the people I want to talk to.
People have lived on this land for more than 7,000 years, and for centuries they've fished these lakes, wearing lightweight, waterproof parkas made from seal gut. These isolated communities have a strong ancestral tradition of myths and legends, including the lake monster. I'm meeting up with the Hill family, who are Athabascan native Alaskans. They have a fishing camp on the northern shore of Lake Iliamna.
If you look at the shape of Iliamna Lake on the map, it has the shape of a fish. There's a large head tapering down to a tail. And the legend is that's how this lake was formed. There's this huge fish that trapped by the mountains, and when the fish is dying or laying on the side, it flops like that and kind of makes a hole.
Some people say even the name Iliamna means a great black fish. Could this be biting holes in people's boats?
People just wouldn't paint their boats a certain color, and you didn't want to paint the bottom of the boat red. I guess there's some connection between painting the bottom of your boat red and the boat disappearing.
The red could have attracted the predatory monster, thinking it was blood from some injured prey. These legends of the monster are clearly ingrained within local culture. But I need to find stories of the monster that are still within living memory, and I found one on Lake Clark. Pilot and town mayor Glenn Allsworth Sr. recalls what happened to an aircraft mechanic in the late 1940s.
The gentleman working for us was trying to catch these large lake trout, but he kept having them break the line. And so being an aircraft mechanic, he got some aircraft cable, which is very, very strong.
So on his normal sort of lake trout tackle, he was just getting broken off several times. So that's when he put the cable down there.
He kept getting broken off.
The mechanic then fashioned his own hook and fixed it to the end of the cable. This was then tied to a washed-up tree stump.
He knew that he had a line there that fish would not break, and so he decided whatever kind of monster was busting off his line, that wasn't going to happen to him again.
Confident that he'd get his fish this time, he left and planned to come back the next morning.
A neighbor that lived by the river observed that stump passing by against the wind in the lake was very rough. And this gentleman that observed this was very surprised that how could this tree stump be moving against the water, against the wind and the waves?
Glenn has told me the exact spot where the stump, weighing nearly 200 pounds, was ripped from the shore and dragged into the water. I'm going to see what I can catch at this location.
I've brought a tent with me, I've also brought my rod, and I'm going to be throwing a bait into this very same area of the lake. This is not the kind of rod you'd normally see being used in fresh water. This is sort of a marine big game rod. Normally be put to use pulling in shark, marlin, tuna, that kind of thing, but everything I've heard about this place, there's stuff in here every bit as big as those animals.
There's a steep drop-off that's further than I can cast the heavy line, so I'm using a kayak to get my bait to a spot where a giant might hide. Something that could drag a tree stump into the lake could easily knock a small boat over. The water in these lakes is only 50 degrees. If I was tossed into the water here, my body would seize up and I'd drown. In these icy waters, bodies sink rather than float, and at depths of up to 1,000 feet, mine might never be found. With the bait out, the plan is to leave it lying on the bottom overnight. and see if I can tempt the monster onto my line. It's just a waiting game now. It's getting close to night, but during the Alaskan summer, it never gets completely dark.
It's actually very strange being up in the Alaskan night because it's well after midnight now and I can see the far bank, I can see the horizon there, I can see the mist over the mountains. So it's a very sort of strange, otherworldly place.
The bait has been in the water for over 12 hours. If the monster was nearby and hungry, it would have taken it by now.
There's nothing there. The bait's still there.
When the weather comes in, the lakes are covered in an eerie fog.
I heard this story about something coming again and again for fish in the water. And I went there and offered a prime piece of fish and just nothing doing at all.
The stories I've heard from the Alaskan natives shroud these lakes in myths and legends, such as if you see the monster, a tragedy will soon befall your family. In conditions like these, the brain becomes very suggestible, and it's easy for your mind to play tricks on you.
I actually thought I saw something back there, and I did a real double take, but I think it was just the dark, long face of a wave. And I can really imagine how, if you're out here any amount of time, you know, you're going to see things possibly even if there's nothing there.
This place has a special atmosphere, but I'm a rationalist. I've got to stay detached and not let my imagination get in the way. To move this investigation on, I need to find out if people have actually come into contact with the monster.
Hello, Bill.
I'm meeting up with Bill Trefon, who is Alaskan native Denina. His family has been living on Lake Clark for generations.
I heard that your parents had an encounter with some large, unknown creature in the lake a while ago.
They were about maybe a mile out, and all of a sudden their motor just stopped. My dad's gonna start working on it. My mother saw where behind him a big tail came up and went down. The motor probably could see teeth marks on it.
What did they think it was?
They think it was a pike.
And there are pike in the lake? There are big pike in the
Oh yeah,
lake?
there's pikes in the lake.
Did your mother have any idea how big it might have been?
Judging from the tail, she thought maybe 12 feet long.
12 feet. So going back generations, people say that if you actually see one of these big fish, it's like a bad sign.
They're superstitious about it, you know. They see the big fish, something will happen in your family. They don't know who or when. My mother saw it. My dad drowned it next summer.
Tragedies like Bill's father drowning only help to strengthen the legends surrounding the monster. But this story has given me some vital information as to what it could be. Attacking a propeller suggests it is a sight predator. It's not some deep water scavenger, but is active on the surface. This all fits with it being a pike, which is what Bill's mother thought she saw. To see if the pike here really can reach such a monstrous size, I have to catch one.
Fish on! Fish on!
I'm in a remote part of Alaska, looking for a lake monster that reportedly lives in these freezing waters.
The fish the size of what I've been hearing could actually sink a boat.
I've got my first suspect, a giant pike that attacked a boat, which I'm now trying to catch. This is Chilitna Bay, near where the boat was attacked and where locals say the biggest pike are. I've come across pike in warm water before, but I've no idea how big they can grow in these glacial conditions. A pike has hundreds of needle-sharp teeth that can cause serious damage to whatever it gets into its mouth, including humans. Glenn Ellsworth Jr. has seen many times how voracious the pike around here can be.
So you've actually seen them take birds?
Yeah. I've seen them take birds. I've seen them take baby ducks and adult ducks.
Adult ducks?
I saw one eat a muskrat once right in this river. And pretty much anything they can fit their mouth around.
Right.
If a 4 or 5 foot pike can eat waterfowl and mammals, it seems logical that a 12-footer could be a man-eater.
So what I've got here, I've got a lure that's sending out very, very strong signals. It's a very bright flash and a very strong vibrating throb. And I guess actually that was probably what was happening when that fish went for that propeller as well. Fish on, fish on, fish on. And, oh, that's a nice size fish, that's a nice size fish. Here we go, let's go in again. That's a nice fish. Going under the boat, I don't want to go up the other side of the boat. Look at that, lovely fish. Deep, lovely, clear water, so you can see the fish really well. Right, hold it clear. A lovely Alaskan pike. Just do a quick measure here, and 40 inches. Lovely fish.
A 40-inch pike is probably around 20 years old.
Now, think about a pike. If there's ever a fish where, you know, the way it looks tells you about the way it lives, I mean, that is the pike. I mean, it's, you know, head full of teeth at one end, not just on the jaws, but on the tongue, on the gill rake as well.
And they have eyes that make them a deadly sight predator.
You can really see here these sighting grooves sort of converging on the prey here. So a bit like sighting grooves on a rifle, and they can just judge the distance to the prey. And they're so wonderfully camouflaged here, just blending into weed. Very long, streamlined shape. And then you've got the dorsal fin right at the back of the body, so you've got a big propulsion unit. As soon as that prey comes within range, it lunges, and once it's in those teeth, there's just no getting away. So just a perfect predator, this fish. There she goes.
I've seen that pike can certainly be aggressive. They'll hit a piece of vibrating, flashing metal on the end of a line. I suppose that once in a while they might possibly hit a boat propeller. But the thing that's bothering me is that Biltrafon's mother talked about seeing something that was 12 foot long, and pike just don't get that big. They'd be really pushed to reach even half that length, and at that size they're not going to be knocking anybody out of a boat, and they're not going to be posing a threat to anybody in the water. So I'm doubtful that what Biltrafon's parents encountered actually was a pike. But I do believe that what they encountered could have been the lake monster. But what is there in the water that can reach that kind of size? Something monstrous could have come in from the sea and into Lake Iliamna. Connecting the two is the Kwijak River, which is 50 miles long.
Just see some dark specks on a tiny little island down there hauled out on some gravel. And those are freshwater seals. Now this is one of very, very few places in the world where you have seals in fresh water. And it does bring home the fact that although we call this expanse of water a lake, it's just so huge. And if the seals have managed to get in here from the ocean, it does make you wonder what else might have got in as well.
Salmon sharks, a close relative of the great white, have been seen in the area. But they can't live in fresh water, so that has to rule them out. But there is one animal around Alaska's shores that's big enough to be the monster and can survive in fresh water. What is the longest lived aquatic animal? Is it A, koi carp, B, quahog clam, or C, bowhead whale? The answer when we return. I asked, what is the longest lived aquatic animal? The answer is B, the quahog clam. One discovered off the coast of Iceland was 405 years old. I'm deep in the Alaskan wilderness in search of a lethal lake monster. I've eliminated my fur suspects, pike and salmon sharks. I'm now finding out what could have got into the lake from the sea. Beluga whales are big enough to be the monster and can live in both salt and fresh water. Could they have swum up the Kwijak River into Lake Iliamna? The shallowest part of the river is the Braids, a labyrinthine area of channels, and they'd have to swim through here to get into the lake. My pilot, Glenn Olsworth Jr., knows the area well.
This looks like about, what, 5 or 6 miles like this, something like that?
Yeah, there's about 5 miles where it's braided this way. And the deeper channels, of course, you can see the darker blue water where the deeper channels are, and then the lighter brown where there's more silt deposit.
This water down here, I mean, there looks to be some pretty good channels through. I think, you know, you certainly got 8 or 9 foot in places. I mean, it might come up to 2 or 3 here and there, but apparently people navigate these waterways with prop boats, you know, without chewing up their propellers. So it definitely looks as if there's enough water for belugas to get up into the lake.
The thing about belugas is that they are mammals. They breathe air, so they have to surface regularly. And in that case, even with the sparse human population around the lake, the sightings would be much more common than they have been. Whatever the monster is, it's something that stays submerged and hidden for long periods of time. On top of that, the people here, they know what belugas look like. If the lake monster was a beluga, frankly, it wouldn't be a mystery.
I'm drawing a bit of a blank with suspects so far, so I'm going to come at this from a different angle. I'll investigate the monster's potential food source. Legends of the famous Loch Ness Monster have been dismissed by some because there isn't enough food in the lake to support an animal of that size. Is there enough food in Lake Iliamna to feed a monster? There is one event each year in these waters that could be what I'm looking for. Every July, there is the world's largest run of sockeye salmon. I'm normally busy catching river monsters in the warmest parts of the world, and fishing for salmon is totally new to me. This is bear country, and they depend on the salmon run for food. So I'll be in direct competition with them for the best fishing spots. We're only about 65 miles from where self-styled grizzly expert Timothy Treadwell and his girlfriend were eaten alive by a hungry grizzly. Carrying a gun at all times is common practice in the Alaskan wilderness, and in case a bear does attack, my pilot Glenn Olsworth Jr. is carrying a .50 caliber handgun. The bears may have already found a good fishing spot.
Just literally, I don't know, sort of 15 feet from where I'm standing, there's been a steady procession of fish through, working their way upstream, and there's also some big dark groups holding as well further down, so I'm quite looking forward to getting a line in the water.
There are no bears in sight, so it seems safe to try and catch my first salmon. When sockeye salmon come out of the sea and enter fresh water, the males undergo a monstrous transformation. They develop a hooked jaw and grow teeth to defend their spawning grounds. Not only that, both the males and females turn red and stop feeding, so they won't go for any bait or fly.
What you're doing is you're casting out, you've got a lump of lead here, and you flick it 45 degrees upstream. It comes down, and the fish are all facing upstream, and the idea is that they've got their mouths open, it just gets in their mouth, that panics them, they run, and as they run, hey, that ends up in the mouth. So it feels like a strike, but and that will be in the mouth, probably like that. But they're not actually going for it. That's the theory. I'm going to see if I can put that into practice.
Time to try and get my first salmon.
Well, there you go, you got it.
Ah, we got actually hooked one. That was a bit of a surprise. The line just was ticking down, and they haven't really spooked off too far. Just ticking down, it just stopped, and I think I was a bit too surprised. I just pulled. I should have sort of actually tried to set the hook a bit more on that one.
With this many salmon around, it's not long before the bears start returning to their fishing spot.
Here's a bear just coming out of the brush on the far side.
Whereabouts is it, Glenn?
He's just looking out of the brush, watching for salmon.
Oh, yeah. And that, I mean, that's a very definite fisherman's posture, isn't it? Even though it's a...
Yeah, you can tell he's ready to pounce down in the water.
Within minutes, 3 large grizzlies have surrounded us. Our day on the river has suddenly become dangerous. I'm on a quest to find the Alaskan lake monster. I've eliminated some suspects, and I'm now seeing if there is enough food in these lakes even to sustain it. I'm trying to catch a salmon, which could be a food source for the monster, and I'm surrounded by deadly bears. Grizzlies are considered by some to be the most dangerous of all bears. They can grow up to 1,500 pounds and run at 30 miles an hour. Humans are wise to keep a safe distance.
Oh, this is absolutely typical. You find a good spot, somebody else comes in, tries to elbow you out, but I think in this case I'm going to make a graceful retreat.
Once they've moved off a bit, I can carry on trying to catch my first salmon. But these grizzlies are putting me to shame.
Ah! Ah! Fantastic to see these bears close up. I wasn't really expecting that. You can see they're semi-aquatic, but I don't think this is the lake monster, but I think you could call it, in some ways, a bit of a river monster. Ah! Here we go.
Believe it or not, this is the first salmon I've ever had on the end of my line. This is a fish that can swim hundreds of miles up these fast-flowing rivers to get to its spawning grounds, so it can put up a strong fight.
Right, fish has done me a favour. It actually has turned off the main flow.
I'm so engrossed with catching a salmon, at first I don't notice our interested onlooker.
Out of the water, out of the water. Right, come. Okay. Right, I think we're going to want to break the fish off. I think it... Oh! No. Hey, you see one of the fish?
This bear is clearly not afraid of us, and that's a problem.
Should we just break it off? No. We're going to break the... No, we're just going to break the fish off.
This is a young grizzly, but although not fully grown, it could still attack and kill any one of us.
You can have the fish.
Luckily, it's more interested in the salmon than us. It took my fish, and a minute later, it's back for more. This time, we need to fire a warning shot.
I am gonna fire away. Oh. He's getting too pushy.
Whoa! No!
You guys, plug your ears.
Just deep breaths, just calm down. It's all part of the day in the life of a fisherman in this part of the world.
Even after a warning shot, the bear won't leave, so it's best that my film crew and I get out.
Be careful, there is that one deeper hole.
I didn't quite succeed in landing my first salmon, but it's clear that they are a vital food source to the whole area. With millions of salmon coming in every year and fish like pike in these waters year-round, I'm convinced that there is enough food to sustain the monster I've been hearing about. Back on the trail of the monster, my investigation has taken a leap forward. This could be the breakthrough I've needed. I'm meeting up with Robin Levine, who saw the monster last year while coming into land on Lake Iliamna.
Hello, lovely place to work.
Robin's an anthropologist who works on these lakes studying subsistence fishing by the Alaska native people.
And it was around here you saw the monster as well, I gather?
Yes, the Iliamna Lake monster.
She's trained to observe things accurately, so has a clear description of what she saw. Robin is going to show me exactly where she saw the monster from the air.
Oh, there's the drop-off, yeah?
Now you see the clear shallow right over there?
Yeah.
That's where we saw it. Right there. It was over on that very clear patch.
Oh, really?
We probably had a good 30 to 40 seconds, maybe longer, to see it. Initially, I thought it was a seal, But almost immediately after that thought crossed my mind, I realized it was far too big. It moved differently. It had a long, broad head, blunted nose. There were very distinct pectoral fins on the side of the fish.
What about the size of this?
As we were pulling into the bay where we were landing, and my friend was coming to pick us up in his boat, I estimated that what we saw was about the same size as his boat, and that's 15 to 18 feet long.
18 feet is the same size as 3 of me, end to end, and much bigger than what Biltrafon's mother saw attacking her boat.
It looks so normal. I've seen beluga from the air. I've seen seals from the air. It looked a part of the natural environment, and I was sure there was some obvious explanation for what we saw.
This is the breakthrough I needed, a graphic description of its shape from somebody who saw it very recently and who observed it clearly for some time. And from her description, the thing that struck me most was how much she emphasised its fins. Now, on a normal fish seen from above, like the salmon, you don't normally see the fins because they're tucked in or folded away. But there are certain fish where, particularly the pectoral fins behind the head, really stick out, a bit like wings almost. This is a crucial bit of the description, and I now really do think I have my prime suspect. All I've got to do now is catch it.
There it is, there it is, there it is.
My quest to prove if there is a monster in these deep Alaskan lakes is now well underway. I've finally had the big breakthrough I needed, an eyewitness account of the monster from last year.
It was over on that very clear patch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've now got a strong suspicion that the monster I've been looking for is a white sturgeon. It's a living dinosaur that has changed very little over 65 million years. Their range is all along the west coast of North America, from mid-California all the way up to Alaska. They can survive in both salt and fresh water, and I've also seen how the river that connects Lake Iliamna to the sea is easily deep enough for them to swim up. Even though they're bottom feeders, they have an interesting behaviour. They can jump out of the water. In recent years, a close relative of theirs, the Gulf sturgeon, has been seriously injuring people in Florida. Could jumping white sturgeon in Lake Iliamna and Lake Clark be the basis of the myths of fishermen going missing? Could they be causing people to disappear, knocking them out of their boats and into the freezing water?
To prove my case, what I need to do is to get my hands on a big sturgeon. However, what we're talking about here is an absolutely immense body of water where nobody has ever caught one, and where the sightings are, they're less than once a year. So to get one on the end of a line, if I had 40, 50 years, I might be in with half a chance, but realistically, it's just not going to happen here.
My challenge has always been to catch this monster, and by hook or by crook, I'm going to get one. With the odds stacked against me here, I'm leaving Alaska and going down to the Columbia River on the Oregon-Washington border. Here, they have a large population of white sturgeon, and I'll have a much better chance of catching one. This will be another first for me. I've never caught a white sturgeon before, and I hear they can put up an incredible fight.
This line, although it's very fine, is actually, it actually has a breaking strain of 100 pounds. It's braided line. The thing about this is, though, it's nice and supple, so that's not going to sort of drag a lot in the water. But another thing about it is it's got no stretch, virtually no stretch compared to nylon monofilament normal fishing line. And what that means is if I hook a big fish with this, I haven't got that elasticity of the line. I'm going to feel everything very, very directly up here. So it's going to be quite a physical struggle with the fish on this gear. So just one final detail, what we're using here is a barbless hook. There's no barb on there, and that's very much about just sort of looking after the fish. We need to go quick. We're on the backing. We're on the backing.
I'm going to drop this bait into about 80 feet of water.
So there we go. It's fully rigged. I think it's still sinking. It's going down in that 80 foot of water, and that will just bump the. There we go. Let's bump the bottom there. Bring it in there. Close it up. That's fine. Oh! There's a bit of a knock again there. Bit of a knock. There's something definitely interesting there. It's at that point where all your imaginings about what's under the water, they are, well, they're starting to take shape. Whatever it is on the end of that line, but that line is so fine. The water here is pretty deep, 70 foot or so. I'm attached to something. There it is, there it is, there it is. There it is.
My first white sturgeon, and the animal I think can easily grow to become a lake monster.
It's a bit of a tug of war, this. I just bring it up and then hook out.
While taking the hook out, my chance to finally see the monster up close eludes me.
Hold on. Oh! That was a very, very brief contact with the animal there. I was leaning over the side. I couldn't reach out as far as I wanted.
The sturgeon are clearly here, and that one was about 5 feet long. But I want a larger one. White sturgeon can grow to about 20 feet.
In there.
It's not long before I get my next bite, and this one feels much bigger.
This fish could be bigger than I am. When the fish wants to go, I'm letting it go, but I'm letting it go under pressure. It's having to work for the line it takes away. And then when the fish takes a bit of a breather, I'm hoping, you know, in those little gaps, I can gain a wee bit of line. I think we might be an idea to cast off. Jack, I think it might help if we cast off. Are we going? Are we on our way? This is a long, long run. We're running out of line here. We're running out of line. We need to go quick. We're on the backing. We're on the backing. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. If you have a look at this line, this is the backing.
I think I may have hooked a monster, but I'm running out of line.
That's the end of my line there, off the reel. I want to get the proper line back on the reel. Right, there we are. We've got the line back on the reel here. That was hairy. I was just watching my line going. That line's coming up in the water. There's the fish. There's the fish. There it is. There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. Ah, I've seen the fish now. That is certainly a big fish.
It's taken me half an hour to bring this sturgeon in. Knowing that this is only around half the length they can grow to, I now totally believe that a larger one could drag a tree stump into the water.
That was a tiring fight. I've caught some big fish in fresh water. This is probably the biggest freshwater fish I've caught. About 300 pounds, this one. It's, you know, a real monstrous fish. That's actually 105 or even 106 inches. That's 8 foot 10 inches. Nearly 9 foot. Nearly 9 foot, this fish. It's quite a thought. That's 1.5 times me.
At 9 feet, this fish is roughly 80 years old, but they can live to over 100.
This looks big in the water, but these things grow to 20 foot, possibly even more, and I mean, just imagine seeing that in the water. I mean, you could be forgiven for saying that was a monster.
Up to 20 feet long matches all the descriptions I've heard about the monster, including Robin's. Plus, the pectoral fins and the long, streamlined body fit how she described what she saw. But what about the teeth marks on the propeller?
Just take a little look at the mouth here. Although it's, you know, you could say it's predatory, it's eaten quite a large dead fish, but there's no teeth in there at all. I can put my hands in there. See, it's very telescopic. You can imagine that just extending and literally just sucking in a small fish.
Having only gums means it couldn't have been teeth marks on the propeller, but I think I know what caused them.
And what's interesting about a sturgeon, it hasn't got a bony skeleton the way we have or the way most other fish has. It's just got cartilage, but what it has got, it's got bony plates on the outside of the body, not totally covering it, but just in rows, and these are, you know, some form of protection. They really are, you know, sort of quite tough bits of bone. There we go. And also a very bony head, very bony gill flap as well.
I believe Bill Treffon's parents actually ran over a white sturgeon, and the propeller going over its bony plates caused what looked like teeth marks. It may not have any teeth, but this mouth is perfectly formed for being a bottom feeder, eating mollusks and small fish. This would explain why it is so rarely seen on Lake Iliamna or Lake Clark, because it spends most of its time in up to 1,000 feet of water. On the rare occasions when they do come to the surface, this could be what is causing some people to disappear. They're jumping. Nobody knows why they jump out of the water. Maybe it's a panic reaction to being disturbed. But when they do, an airborne giant could easily knock somebody out of their boat and into the icy depths. This all makes me convinced that the Alaskan lake monster is actually a small landlocked population of white sturgeon.
But I mean, so impressive just to get close to an animal like that and to actually touch it and look at it close up. And I really think that for a few moments there, I was actually in the presence of the creature that is the lake monster.
Want more of the world's wildest, strangest and most terrifying freshwater horrors? Visit our website at animalplanet.com/rivermonsters.